You want to talk about big dreams? You want to talk about achieving the unthinkable? Could the Memphis Grizzlies really have a chance at Giannis Antetokounmpo and the two players they'd probably have to give up to obtain the service of Giannis have a long ways to go to contribute, whether it's in Memphis or beyond, to a championship? We're going to cover all that and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax. Yes, you heard me correctly. Host. No to Michael Cole, again, handling some business on his end. He's the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the commercial appeal there in Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, of course. DeMichael's got some things going on. He will be back with me, though. I promise he's not leaving us forever. He's just handling some things on his end. He'll be back soon. I am your host for this podcast, Joe Mullinax, and I'm so glad that for the next 30 minutes or so, you'll be talking Memphis Grizzlies basketball with me here on the show. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google. Literally, it's all good. Thank you so much to you, our everydayers out there, people that check out the show each and every time that an episode drops. DeMichael and I appreciate it tremendously. And again, wherever you get podcasts, become an everydayer if you're not already one, and hang out with myself and DeMichael Cole each and every time a show goes live, wherever you take in your podcasts. You know me. If you are an everydayer, you know that I love the trade machine. If it wasn't for my beautiful wife, if it was possible to marry an inanimate object that is intellectual property that exists on the internet, the trade machine might be in the running. I love the hypotheticals. I love the theoreticals. I love matching salary cap numbers. What can I say? I have a sick mind. And one of the biggest fish that has perhaps ever been in the trade machine conversation, and that's crazy to say considering Luka Doncic has been traded in this calendar year, is Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. And chances are, if you're an NBA fan, you have heard that Giannis could potentially be on the move. It's been reported by Shams Charania of ESPN and others that it's not decided. Giannis hasn't requested anything, but it would be fair to say that Giannis has never been more open to a trade than he is currently. Now, on yesterday's show, we talked about how things look pretty bleak for the Memphis Grizzlies when it comes to how the NBA draft lottery turned out. Cooper Flagg could be planting his flag in Dallas very soon. You have the San Antonio Spurs with the number 2 overall pick, already having Victor Wembanyama and Stephon Castle, the last 2 Rookie of the Year winners, in the fold. And then you have the Houston Rockets, who had a pretty impressive season, didn't end the way they wanted it to against the Golden State Warriors, but still a strong showing for a relatively young team. All of those teams have assets that could be in the mix to acquire a player the likes of Giannis. The Dallas Mavericks, now have the number 1 overall pick. That's a pretty lofty thing to float in front of Milwaukee. If you're trying to accelerate a rebuild, you get the best player in this draft, a possible generational talent in Cooper Flagg. But it's also possible that Dallas says, let's hold on to this, because Cooper is a talented offensive player, but what Flagg does best is what Nico Harrison loves best: defend. He's a great defender as well. So while it may not check the box of championship contention, holding on to Flagg might make sense. San Antonio Spurs getting in on the Giannis mix, they might have to give up a little bit more than they would like to. Maybe they really like one of the Rutgers players that's at the top of the NBA draft board. Maybe they want to continue this rebuild process around Wembanyama and give it another couple years. Maybe they don't see themselves as ready for championship contention. And in the case of Houston, that one is particularly interesting to watch play out, because the Rockets have the mix of young talent and draft capital that could entice the Milwaukee Bucks. But the Houston Rockets also have potential dealings to do with a team out in Phoenix by the name of the Suns with Kevin Durant. And Phoenix might be very willing to interact with the Rockets in that journey because the Rockets have control of Phoenix's drafts in terms of draft flipping and that sort of thing, pick flips. And there's ways that a Phoenix and Houston deal make a lot of sense. A trade that could bring KD to the Rockets. So all that is to say, this is Locked On Grizzlies after all. Perhaps there is a path for the Memphis Grizzlies to go out and get Giannis. Now, reports have suggested Giannis wants to play in Los Angeles. He wants to play in Miami. He wants to play in New York. Other reports have suggested that Giannis is intrigued by the idea of playing somewhere with no state income tax. Tennessee checks that box, of course, with Memphis. And the thing that intrigues me with a potential Giannis trade when it comes to the Grizzlies is the argument that a good old friend of mine, Mr. Matt Moore at HP Basketball on Twitter, Locked On Nuggets host, does so much great work with the Action Network and everywhere else, has an amazing Substack at HP Basketball. Follow him if you don't already. He and others on X and in the NBA media creation community are starting to fall in line around a theory that if you are going to succeed in this CBA environment, you cannot afford to have 3 massive contracts. It limits your roster building too much. 2 massive contracts is the way to go, and building around those 2 stars. The Oklahoma City Thunder might be experiencing that in the next year or so, having to decide who they align next to Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, or Jalen Williams. One of those guys could be part of a trade to Milwaukee, including all of the various draft capital combinations that OKC could provide. A better package than Memphis, to be sure. But if you're the Milwaukee Bucks and you want to walk the line of continued competitiveness in an Eastern Conference that outside of the top, you have the Jason Tatum unfortunate injury that's going to limit the Celtics. While the Pacers and the Knicks are the likely Eastern Conference Finals, neither of those teams instills fear in your heart long-term. A dynasty, I think most folks would agree, is not being born out East. The Cavaliers are still a piece of the puzzle, of course. But it's not like the Eastern Conference is some monolith or even as competitive as the Western Conference is. It's not even close. Maybe they think they can hang around the 5, 6, or 7 seed if they bring back a couple of really good players in exchange for their great player in Giannis. Enter Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. And I would most certainly entertain the thought of including Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., the Memphis Grizzlies, in a trade for Giannis. Because it gets you to that 2 superstar model. It allows for you, as we talked about yesterday on the show, to see Ja Morant as a number 2 player on a team, not a number 1. Do I think Ja Morant is a number 1 player on a championship team? I have my reservations that I talked about on yesterday's show. If you missed it, make sure you go check it out. Is Ja Morant a number 2 player on a championship team? I'm fairly confident in saying yes. I think that could be the case. Giannis is a number 1 on a championship team. We've seen it. And Giannis at the age of 30 is in his prime. This is not a player that you would look at and say, oh, they're over the hill. You're not trading for a 36 or 37-year-old wing or big in Kevin Durant. This is somebody who has several elite years remaining. A Ja Morant, Giannis pick and roll will be one of the most dominant forces in the entire NBA, and it allows for you to have a clear blueprint of what needs to be put around them, namely shooting, but also versatility beyond that in terms of the ability to defend multiple positions on the perimeter to help Ja Morant maximize his offensive production. So a Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and 3 to 4 first-round picks, could that be enough to pry Giannis and his 2 years left on his contract until a player option out of Milwaukee? It'd be where I start. And while I think moving on from someone like Jalen Wells perhaps would be a bridge too far, at some point it becomes counterproductive to making that tandem thrive. Someone like a Gigi Jackson, I'll be honest, someone like a Zach Edey. While Edey could play with Giannis, and I think Edey could come off the bench and perhaps give you 24 minutes or so as a reserve, I could see Edey being included in a trade like that as well, or as part of a 3-team trade to bring in more perimeter scoring and more perimeter defense. I don't hate the idea of Bane and Jackson Jr. for Giannis. I think that it allows for you to maximize two superstars. And it also gives you, again, a clear path to what is necessary for contention around them. That would be my offer. What say you? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm onto something? What would you be willing to move on from for Giannis to become a member of the Memphis Grizzlies? When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to assume the more likely outcome that Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are back for the 2025-2026 season. We're going to start with Dez getting back to basics and helping him find his footing to get to a place of true star contribution. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by WayFair. The days are getting longer, the weather is warming up, and people are spending more time outside. You know that I hate the hot weather. I'm going to be honest with you. Humidity is not my friend, but my wife loves the outdoors, and that means it's a perfect time for her, and by proxy me, to refresh our outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, WayFair can help you do the same thing that we're doing and make our outdoor spots feel more like you. WayFair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all and at prices that fit your budget. The delivery is free and hassle-free, even for the big stuff. And whether you're entertaining guests or just relaxing on your own, shopping WayFair can help you unwind. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer. Get outside with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. So I talked a lot about trading Desmond Bane earlier in the show. And again, if you are an everydayer of this podcast, that might surprise you a little bit because I am a Desmond Bane guy. I have been since the very beginning, going all the way back to 2020 when he was drafted. I believed in Desmond Bane, and I still believe in Desmond Bane. I see him as a valuable contributor to basketball success. But there's no denying that this was one of his most, I don't want to say off-putting, that's not a fair way to describe it, one of his least successful seasons as a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. For one thing, he did not have the offensive impact that he has had in prior seasons. His worst effective field goal percentage season per cleaning the glass of his career. His worst points per 100 possession improvement when he was on the floor. The Grizzlies were only a +0, a net neutral, when Bane was out there. So it was as if he wasn't contributing in a positive manner in any way, shape, or form when compared to the rest of the team when he was not on the floor. And his defensive struggles, the team's defensive struggles when he was on the court were massive, the biggest of his career. Opposing offenses were 4.3 points better per 100 possessions. When Bane was out there, that is 17th percentile per cleaning the glass among NBA, players. So Bane did not contribute to winning this year, at least not in terms of points per possession. And he needs to return, Desmond Bane does, to what made him great in the first place. That is the prioritization of shooting the basketball and getting off shots. Desmond Bane, for 2 years now, but especially this past year, has been asked to do a lot creating offense for others. And there are problems with that. The downhill Dez mantra, this concept of him that we saw more and more in 2024, 2025, getting to the basket, trying to draw fouls. He took more shot attempts at the rim the last few years in particular, than he did his first two. That downhill Dez concept, certainly an active piece of his puzzle. But only 39% of his shots this year were threes. That's 28th percentile among NBA wings. 39% of those shots. That is the lowest of his Memphis Grizzlies career. 4 percentage points lower than it was last season, and 15 percentage points lower than it was in his rookie campaign. Desmond Bane's game has grown by leaps and bounds. I'm not trying to make it seem like it hasn't. His assist to usage rate is elite among wing players in the NBA. His assist percentage over the last several years has become elite among wing and combo guard types in the NBA. And again, that's all per cleaningtheglass.com. However, Desmond Bane, what makes him special, and you've heard me talk about this before, when there's been conversations about a Luke Kennard, why I was an advocate of Luke Kennard all these years, it's because he has an elite skill. Luke Kennard is an elite three-point shooter. Desmond Bane. And no, I'm not advocating for keeping Luke Kennard. I think it's fair to say he's played his last game in Memphis unless he plans on signing a veteran minimum contract. Cam Spencer's literally right there to convert a two-way deal into a full-blown contract as part of the full-time roster. I am saying that Desmond Bane has a three-point shot that when you combine his accuracy with his frequency from early in his career is only matched with the names like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, the very best three-point shooters of this century. Desmond Bane is in that conversation. At least he has been in the past. The last couple of years, not so much. 39% from three the last 2 seasons. He shot 44% in his sophomore season. That also was the season that he played the most, 2,200 minutes played, and he shot 44% from beyond the arc. Bane is being asked to do too much in my measure. I would love, in this new Tuomas Isalo universe, to see Bane get the chance to just be a scorer, to just be a three-point shooter, to just be someone who can create off the dribble, somebody who can be that secondary or tertiary creator of offense for himself and others, someone who has that capacity and can do it from time to time, but isn't directed to do it. It isn't something that is intended for him within scheme. Because I think you start to devalue what Desmond Bane does best, providing that spacing, being that ideal backcourt partner for Ja Morant, not because he can create offense for Ja off the dribble. Ja doesn't need help with that. Ja can create offense, his own shot, his own passing lane for a teammate on the lob. Morant could do those things just fine on his own. But he needs the space to operate, whether it's a Zach Edey screen like we talked about yesterday, or whether it is shooting next to him that forces defenders to stay home on threats from beyond the arc and gives Morant even more of a lane to create for himself and for others. Desmond Bane has been asked to do too much. And I think that translates to the defensive end. Desmond Bane has too many turnovers. That has been something that's been a major problem this particular season. 12.7% was his turnover rate. 35th percentile among wings. That's the worst of his career. And he is being put in situations where he's being asked to make decisions, not just for himself, but for others, that shouldn't be asked of him. Yeah, Ja missed some games. Ja missed some time. You've got Scottie Pippen Jr. right there. You have options in terms of other facilitators. And if you don't like those options, last week, DeMichael Cole talked about Malcolm Brogdon. There are going to be players that could be available for the mid-level exception that fill that Derrick Rose-esque mold that the Grizzlies hoped D Rose would be able to do a couple of years ago. And he can be the one that eats those 12 to 14 minutes of Ja Morant minutes if you see Scottie Pippen Jr. as more of a combo guard moving forward. He certainly looked the part in the playoffs. I need more Desmond Bane three-point shots. I need more Desmond Bane flare screens. I need more Desmond Bane coming off a run from down the baseline, coming off of a set pick on the perimeter, being able to set his feet and shoot threes. We didn't see that in the Taylor Jenkins offense. There's a lot of pick and roll. There's a lot of dribble penetration. There's a lot of kicking out to shooters. How many set plays can you recall for a guy like Desmond Bane to be able to come off of a screen and hit a three in a normal offensive set, not an out-of-timeout play, not something, a sideline out play, a slob, sideline out of bounds, not one of those kinds of plays, just within set offense. How many pin-down screens is Bane seeing on a regular basis? How many open looks that aren't flybys or him having to do step backs off the dribble, isolation-type looks? How much rhythm has Des been able to get into? I think that's a fair question to ask. So yeah, If a Giannis trade comes calling, I would entertain a Des move. But at the same time, I'm on the record on this podcast and elsewhere saying I want to see what Ja, Des, and Jaren can do with someone that's not Taylor Jenkins as their head coach. And we're entering that realm. Tuomas Isolo's era has begun. So if Tuomas, noted everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, is checking out today's show, let Des be Des. Of course he can create. I knew he could all the way back in 2020. I saw that potential. But we know what he's best at. We know where his elite skill set is. Let him rediscover that this season, and let's see if he can help the offense in that particular way. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll close out this episode of the show talking about Jaren Jackson Jr.'s season, ways that he can get better heading into an important 2025-2026. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by CarGurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. Between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can most certainly feel overwhelming. So when I'm in the market for a car, I love using CarGurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. Over 4 million listings are available at CarGurus, more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the United States. They can verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. You can get a deal that you can trust with CarGurus. They make it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. Plus, the in-depth vehicle details give you peace of mind before stepping out onto any lot. It's no wonder that SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows CarGurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. We're going to close out today's episode talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. And again, much like Desmond Bane, I love Jaren Jackson Jr., and it's very possible that this conversation, as all NBA teams and all defense, those things get announced in the days and weeks ahead. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Grizzlies, and the conversation might shift. It might make more sense for Memphis to lock down Jaren long term and just have him be that second star. Maybe Desmond Bane is the guy that gets traded. But let's assume that Jaren doesn't get all NBA, which is possible. Let's assume that Jaren is entering the final year of his contract and he could become an unrestricted free agent. Jaren Jackson Jr. will be more motivated than ever for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of reasons to put his best foot forward. And I think that the biggest space where he can grow, again, if you're an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, this won't surprise you, is in his creation. As much as I want Desmond Bane to take a step back in that role, I want Jaren Jackson Jr. to take a step forward. Now, Jaren's usage has been elite among NBA bigs for much of his career, and that certainly was the case this season. It wasn't as much as it was last year because you had Ja Morant on the court more, but there was still more opportunity for Jaren to score the basketball and be a priority in that space. Where I have an issue with Jaren is not with his fouls, because that's something that's been belabored and talked about here, there, and everywhere. We'll continue to have those conversations. The way that he defends, the way that he goes up to try to block shots, he's going to foul some. You want to talk about the ticky-tack things that he does from time to time, the frustration decisions that he makes, that's fair. But if we want Jaren to take the next step, and especially if we want to operate in a world where he is the second star next to Ja, and it's Desmond Bane that gets shipped out if we're going to subscribe to that 2-star CBA philosophy. Not saying I would. I would not this season. I'd keep Des around. Giannis obviously throws a wrinkle into that plan if that's a realistic possibility for the Grizzlies. But assuming it's Jaren that stays in Memphis long term, he has to be a better creator of offense for others. And this has rarely been a strength of his game. In fact, in his 7 NBA seasons, pretty crazy to say out loud that Jaren has played 7 NBA seasons. In his 7 NBA seasons, only once has Jaren had an assist percentage above average in the NBA among bigs. And that was in 2023-2024, 13.3%. That was 73rd percentile. He regressed pretty aggressively from that mark this past season, down to 10.3% per cleaning the glass. And that doesn't make a ton of sense to me because the team was healthier this year compared to last year. He was dealing with Lamar Stevens. He was dealing with Scottie Pippen Jr. before he made his leap. He was dealing with Gigi Jackson, who people were yelling at me not too long ago, for pointing out that Gigi was putting up numbers on a team that wasn't particularly good. Gigi is still young and was coming off of an injury. But Gigi Jackson was at times the best player on that Grizzlies team when Jaren was not on the floor. It's not like Jaren had all the key cogs around him to be an effective creator of offense for others. And yet he was able to do it. So the step back this year is frustrating. It's not just frustrating because the numbers went down. It's frustrating because your eyes tell you that it was things that could have been avoided. Either he's not able to see basic double teams collapsing on him on his drives on the perimeter. He's one of the best isolation scorers in the NBA. Defenses know that now. The book is out on Jaren. He loves to get to his left hand. He loves to come out of a spin. They know this. If I know it, NBA coaching staffs know it. And as defenses collapse, Jaren, not anywhere nearly often enough, would find the open shooter or find a guy slashing backside or kick it back out just to reset things and get a better look for somebody else. It is often true that the best option for the Grizzlies offensively is a Jaren Jackson shot, but that is not the case when a double or triple team is coming or when you're forcing it so aggressively that the ball slips out of your hands. Jaren was not a turnover issue, but he was someone who was so intent on forcing his will on the offensive end, or at least trying to, that he didn't have the ability to make the right play often enough. And it's not like it was a back-breaking, head-turning, highlight-inducing pass that was asked for. Just a simple kick out on the perimeter. That dribble penetration that Desmond Bane has become good at, that John Morant is elite at. Jaren Jackson Jr. struggles with immensely. And he's 6'11". He's 245 pounds. You don't want him to become a Ben Simmons lookalike. You don't want him to be a guy that has this capacity to pass and only pass. You don't want him to give up his offensive skill that he has developed over the last couple of seasons and what makes him a borderline all-NBA player. The two-way capacity that he brings to the table. But let's go back to Giannis. Close it out on that note. If we call Jaren Giannis light, Jaren has to see what Giannis has become as an offensive creator himself. If Jaren is going to stay in Memphis, and that seems like the most likely outcome, Giannis has become one of the very best creators of offense among bigs and forwards in the National Basketball Association. Giannis has a remarkable 33.9% assist percentage. 33.9%. This is somebody that can absolutely create offense for others off the dribble, for himself as well, of course. He, for his position, is elite. If Jaren is going to stay in Memphis and make himself a better offensive option, that has to be a massive piece of growth for him moving forward, not just for his own game and his own numbers and his own future financial security, but for the success of the Memphis Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is appreciated. Shout out to Desmond Bane. Shout out to Jaren Jackson Jr. I want to reiterate one final time. Giannis to Memphis is extremely unlikely, right? Giannis to Miami, Giannis to Golden State, Giannis to Brooklyn, Giannis to the Knicks, Giannis to lots of different places is probably more probable. But the Memphis Grizzlies can give Milwaukee the combination of things that they would likely want. The chance to remain competitive in a weaker Eastern Conference. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are two of the top 50 players in the NBA. In the case of Jaren, he's a top 20 or 25 player in the NBA this past season. Plus draft capital that enables them to make moves themselves, continue a rebuild. Those sorts of things are on the table for Milwaukee. It's not an unattractive trade package if the Bucks wanted to go that route. And again, the Grizzlies get one of the best two-man punches in the entire league if that were to hypothetically happen. But the most likely outcome is that Dez and Jaren stick around. Dez needs to get back to what made Dez great in the first place. Jaren needs to grow as a facilitator, much like Giannis has that capacity already as a big. We'll continue our breakdown of players from this past season as we grind forth here on Locked On Grizzlies. Zach Edey, Jalen Wells. Maybe we take a look at some of the younger players on our next episode. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google. Anywhere you get a podcast, make DeMichael and I a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. And now that you've made us here at Locked On Grizzlies your first listen, check out Locked On NBA Game Night for your second listen. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for being with me on this Wednesday edition of the show. Until next time, I'm Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Jaren and Des remain part of the Grizzlies' future, but the allure of Giannis is very real. Stick around. Have a good one.